Pralayapayodi jale dhritavānasi vedam Vihita vahitra charitram makedam Pralayapayodi jale Keshavadhrita Meena Sharira Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadhrita Jagadisha Hare Kshitiriha Vipulatare Tishtati Tava Prishte Dharani Dharana Kina Chakra Garishte Kshitiriha Vipulatare Tishtati Keshavadhrita Kurma Sharira Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Vasati dashana shikhare dharani tabalagna Shashini kalanka kaleva nimagna Keshavadhrita Shukara Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiraṇyakaśipu Tanubringam Tavakara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiraṇyakaśipu Keshavadhrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Chalayasi Vikramane Balamadbhuta Vamana Padanaka Nirajanata Jana Pavana Keshavadhrita Vamanarupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Kshatriya Rudhiramaye Jagadapagata Papam Snapayasi Payasi Shamita Bhavatapam Maye Jagadapagata Papam Keshavadhrita Bhrigupati Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadhrita Bhrigupati Rupa Jaya Vitarasi Dikshurane Dikpati Kamaniyam Dashamukha Mauli Balim Ramaniyam Keshavadhrita Rama Sharira Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Isha Hare Vahasiva Pushvishade Vasanam Jaladabham Halahati Bhiti Malita Yamunabham Keshavadhrita Haladhara Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Nindasi yajna videraha shruti jatam Sadaya hridaya darshita pashughatam Keshavadhrita Buddha Sharira Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Mlecchane vahane dhane kalayasi karavalam Dhumaketumiva kimapi karalam Sikaravalam Dhumaketumiva kimapi karalam Keshavadhrita kalki sharira Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Shri Jayadeva Kaveridamuditamudaram Shrinu Sukhadam Shubhadam Bhavasaram Keshavadhrita Dashavidharupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Dashavidharupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Keshavadhrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadhrita Narahari Rupa Okay, maybe for the sake of time, that took longer than I expected. Maybe for the sake of time, we won't read the full translation. But this song is a song written by Sri Jayadeva Goswami from Gita Govinda that glorifies the Dasha avatars, the 10 main avatars of Lord Vishnu. So in each verse, he is glorifying... the 12th verse kind of summarizes. Oh yeah, okay. 12th, yeah, we can read the 12th verse. Okay. O Lord Krishna, I offer my obeisances unto you, who appear in the forms of these 10 incarnations. In the form of Matsya, you rescue the Vedas, and as Kurma, you bear them under a mountain on your back. As Varaha, you lift the earth with your tusk, and in the form of Nrsimha, you tear open the chest of the Daitya Hiraṇyakaśipu. In the form of Vamana, you trick the Daitya king Bali by asking him for only 3 steps of land, and then you take away the whole universe from him by expanding your steps. As Parashuram, you slay all of the wicked Kshatriyas, and as Ramachandra, you conquer the Rakshasa king Ravana. And in the form of Balaram, you carry a plow with which you subdue the wicked and draw toward you the river Yamuna. As Lord Buddha, you show compassion toward all the living entities, all the living beings suffering in this world, and at the end of the Kali Yuga, you appear as Kalki to bewilder the Mlechas, degraded low-class men. So Lord Nrsimhadeva is one of the Dasha avatars. Today is his appearance day. So, yes, that's why we sang that song. Oh, Krishna. Could you get me a CC Madhya? Sorry. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we're reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 8, text number 6, which is actually a verse, it's quoted in the Madhya Lila, but it's actually written by Sridhar Swami in his commentary on the Bhagavatam. Ugra pi anugra evayam svabhaktanam nrikeshari keshariva swapotanam anyesham ugravikramaha ugrapyanugra evayam.
Slower. You're actually trying to teach the devotees.
Okay.
So if you want to teach them, go slowly.
Okay. Ugrapyanugra evayam Sabhaktanam nrikeshari Keshari vasapotanam Anyesham ugravikramaha Ugrapyanugra evayam Sabhaktanam nrikeshari Keshari vasapotanam Anyesham ugravikramaha Ugrapyanugra evayam Svabhaktanam nrikeshari Keshari vasapotanam Anyesham ugravikramaha. Ugraha, ferocious. Api, although. Anugraha, not ferocious. Eva, certainly. Ayam, this. Swabhaktanam, to his pure devotees. Nrikeshari, having the body of a human being and a lion. Keshari iva, like a lioness. Swapotanam, to her young cubs. Anyesham, to others. Ugra, ferocious. Vikramaha, whose strength. Translation: although very ferocious, the lioness is very kind to her cubs. Similarly, although very ferocious to non-devotees like Hiraṇyakaśipu, Lord Nrsimhadeva is very, very soft and kind to devotees like Prahlāda Mahārāja. Purport: this verse was composed by Sridhar Swami in his commentary on the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.1. Om ajñānatimidandasya jñānāñjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya manobhishtam sthapitam yena bhutale svayam rupagadamahyam dadati svapadantikam vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so today we are speaking about Lord Nrsimhadeva on his divine appearance day. So in this world, the relationship between master and servant, you could say, is very impersonal and not usually something very desirable. For instance, you see sometimes, I don't know, maybe in movies or something like that, you'll see a very rich man and he has all these servants. There's not much of an intimate relationship there. Generally, the servant knows his place. Although there may be some superficial kind of affection, the servant generally kind of knows his place and doesn't really, you could say, interfere or get too close to the master. This also goes for, like, when I was 18, before I joined the temple, I used to work at Target. And when you're working for a company like that, you don't really know your boss. I mean, you know your immediate boss. But to this day, I don't know who the CEO of Target is. I don't know anybody who's... I don't know anybody who's a part of the company. I didn't know back then, and I don't know now. But I knew whatever I had to do, whatever my immediate boss said, and that was that. And I didn't like him very much, to be honest with you. So the relationship between the servant and the Lord is very different from this. It's actually a very intimate relationship. The relationship between Prahlāda Mahārāja and Lord Nrsimhadeva, for example, is a very intimate relationship. But it's interesting because the Lord has nothing really to gain from such relationships, you could say, ultimately. And really the servant, actually, in a lot of ways, also doesn't really get anything in terms of, like a material kind of transaction. My Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami, has this book, the Brahmachari and Krishna Consciousness, and within that book, he says that Krishna consciousness, for a materialist, when they get a job, they want, as little work as possible, and very easy work, and they want very high pay. But in Krishna consciousness, oftentimes, it's long hours, it's very hard work, and there's no pay. So oftentimes people, materialists, will criticize or will, it's confusing for them. They'll say, oh wow, well, you're a very intelligent person. Especially in India, you have these, college-educated young men who are basically giving everything up and becoming brahmacharis and traveling and preaching. And so it's very confusing for people. It's very confusing for people why devotees do things like that. Of course, it's not that we get nothing out of it. We get the highest wealth. Prema Dana, Jayanilo Prema Dana, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was spreading the greatest wealth of prema. But it's not like a calculated thing. It's not, okay, I'm gonna put in this many years as a brahmachari, I'm gonna put in this many years, whatever, preaching this place or doing this thing or doing that thing, put in this many hours, decorating the temple or something like that, just so I can get a set amount, so I can get my share of prema, something like that. It's not calculated. The devotee, just out of love, desires to serve. And in reciprocation, the Lord, he also showers love reciprocally on the devotees. But yeah, there's no, if you analyze it, there's no reason for the Lord, you could say, to love his devotees. There's no real reason why Nrsimhadeva had to love Prahlāda Mahārāja. The Lord, he's self-satisfied. He doesn't really have anything to gain from It's not like, we minuscule jivas can give anything substantial to the Lord. So why, then? Why does the Lord love his devotees? Well, it's something like asking, why does a lioness love her cubs? Or if you go up to a woman and you ask her, excuse me, miss, why do you love your children? There's not really a logical answer to that question. They just kind of do. They love their children, and their children love them. It's just, that's their nature. It's inherent within them. So similarly, it's inherent in the nature of the Lord to love his devotees, just like a mother loves her children, and just like a lioness loves her cubs, because that's just what he's kind of about. He likes that. He likes those relationships. And if you look at it, there's a very big difference between a lioness and her cubs, or a mother and a baby for that matter. The baby, especially if it's like a newborn baby, basically completely helpless. Can't really do anything on its own. It's completely at the mercy of the mother. If the mother chooses to neglect it, which unfortunately happens, then the baby is basically doomed. It basically has no hope. It can't eat by itself, can't, walk by itself, can't go to the bathroom by itself. I mean, it can, but... the baby is completely helpless, subordinate, whereas the mother is in the position of the protector. The mother is basically free to do whatever she wants. And similarly, like a lioness. A lioness is very powerful, has the power to kill. But the cub is, very helpless and small and cute. But the lioness is the protector. So in a similar way, there's a very big difference between Nrsimhadeva and Prahlāda Mahārāja. Nrsimhadeva is very powerful. It's very big, huge body, very fierce. These nails, very sharp nails. And especially in the form that Prahlāda Mahārāja was seeing him in, this Ugra Nrsimha form, he's extremely angry, like basically the storehouse of all anger, divine anger. Whereas Prahlāda Mahārāja, he was a little boy. Of course, he was very powerful, because Nrsimhadeva made him powerful in regards to resisting Hiraṇyakaśipu's tortures. But in reality, he was a little boy. So powerful people generally don't make friends with little boys. If you look at like a powerful person in this world, generally they make friends with other powerful people. Looking at this pastime, it might seem more obvious to, you could say, somebody from the outside, that Nrsimhadeva would maybe make a compromise or make friends with Hiraṇyakaśipu. They were both very powerful. They both, both very powerful people. Just like two powerful nations, like Russia and China or whatever. They make alliances. Powerful nations make alliances with each other. And they don't generally make alliances with very small nations. Generally, a powerful nation will just kind of exploit or take over another, a very small nation. So, although Hiraṇyakaśipu was very powerful and Prahlāda Mahārāja was not very powerful, Nrsimhadeva tore Hiraṇyakaśipu into pieces, whereas he didn't with Prahlāda Mahārāja, even though he very well could have, and he could, it wouldn't be very much for him to tear Prahlāda Mahārāja apart. Prahlāda Mahārāja was a little boy. Actually, everybody, not even just Hiraṇyakaśipu, everybody was afraid of Nrsimhadeva. All the demigods were there. And they thought that maybe they were next. They were trying to pacify Nrsimhadeva with prayers. Brahma was there. Lakshmi Devi was there. Even she was afraid of him. She's the consort of Lord Vishnu. Even she was afraid of Nrsimhadeva in that form. But Prahlāda Mahārāja wasn't. Prahlāda Mahārāja wasn't afraid at all. just like a cub is never afraid of the lioness. Even if a cub is right there and is watching a lioness, tear apart some, other animal, the cub's never afraid. He's not thinking, oh, geez, I might be next. The cub sees the lioness as a shelter. And so similarly, Prahlāda Mahārāja, he knew that the Lord was his shelter. He knew that those nails and that anger, they weren't for him. The Lord was his protector because he'd taken shelter of the Lord. And so if you look at the pastime, Hiraṇyakaśipu, he tortured Prahlāda Mahārāja for a very long time before Nrsimhadeva intervened. He threw him in oil, he threw him off a cliff, tried to have him trampled by elephants. Was it eaten by snakes? He threw him in like a snake pit or something like that. Had him cursed.
Threw him off a cliff?
Yeah, threw him off a cliff, and then had different spells cast on him. So he really tried to torture him. Of course, he also had his demons try to just kill him with weapons. So one might say, okay, well, what kind of shelter is that? The Lord's just watching all this happen. Why didn't he just kill Hiraṇyakaśipu from the beginning? Why did he even let the whole thing happen? And there's a few different reasons for this. One reason, which Srila Prabhupada brings up in different places, is that the Lord, he allows his devotees to undergo tribulation in order to glorify his devotees' faith and his devotees' tolerance. And Prahlāda Mahārāja certainly had a lot of faith and a lot of tolerance. There's this verse in Prema Vivarta by Jagadananda Pandit, where he says, what is it? Pishachi paile jena mati chana hoy, maya grasta jivar hoy sheb havadoy. That one who is maya grasta, one who is like basically haunted by maya, they're exactly like a person who's haunted by a ghost, in the sense that they speak all kinds of nonsense, they have all kinds of nonsense thoughts, they're basically crazy. So Prahlāda Mahārāja, he was like that, but in a positive way. He was Krishna grasta. He was, you could say, like basically haunted by the ghost of Krishna. Like you see some people, especially in PB and like OB and downtown, these people who are just completely insane. They have no, maybe they're walking, mumbling to themselves or something like that. Or
you don't mean the average guy, you mean the real crazies.
Well, yeah, I mean the average guy too.
Okay.
But
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, but you see these people and they basically have no, like we have one guy who sleeps right here, in front of this dentist office. And I mean, you look at him and he basically has no external consciousness at all. He's just kind of moving around and making all kinds of noises and stuff like that. So Prahlāda Mahārāja was kind of like in a similar situation, in the sense that he was so absorbed in his meditation on the Lord. What is that verse? Hridvagvapur bir vidadan namaste. He was so absorbed in offering obeisances to the Lord with his heart, within his heart and with his words and his actions, etc., that he was basically completely oblivious to the outside world. I mean, not completely, but it was inconsequential to him. It didn't mean much to him. And the example of this in Gaur Lila is like Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, he was being beaten, in all these different marketplaces, but he just continued on chanting. He just he wasn't affected. So for the pure devotees, they're so absorbed in meditating on the Lord and praying to the Lord and offering obeisances to the Lord that basically the whole world around them is just kind of inconsequential, doesn't mean much to them. So the Lord sometimes, in order to glorify his devotee, he puts them in difficulties so that this comes out. And this also gives an example for us. Like there's that verse in the Bhagavatam, Tatenu kampam susamikshmana bhunjana evatmakritam vipakam hridvagvapurvir vidadan namaste jivetio muktipade sadayabak. So, Prabhupada said that this verse is the example for all devotees. That basically we should all imbibe this, that there are so many difficulties in this world. Naturally, it's dukkhalayam ashashtam. Krishna says that it's full of suffering and it's temporary. So there's so many difficulties. But one should tolerate them. This verse is saying that one should tolerate them, understanding them to be one's own sinful reactions. And one should tolerate them ultimately knowing that the Lord is protecting them. Maybe not protecting their body. The Lord doesn't always protect His devotees' body, but He protects them from any kind of bad end. He protects them from hellish suffering. He protects them from degradation. So everything Krishna arranges for His devotees is perfect. And it's meant for our purification. When one comes when one begins practicing devotional service, he's no longer subject to karma. Krishna personally takes charge of doling out his sinful reactions in such a way that he becomes purified. And Prabhupada, in one purport in the first canto, says that the tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord is actually another kind of bhav that He relishes with them. Because when one is in difficulty, when a devotee is in difficulty, naturally he takes more shelter of. Bhav is like a relationship or like an exchange, like a loving. No, B-H-A-V-A. V-A. Bhava. Yeah. So when one is put into difficulty, when the Lord puts His devotee into difficulty, then naturally the devotee takes deeper shelter of meditating upon the Lord, praying to the Lord, and in this way the relationship deepens. And just like in Vraj, when Krishna, there's that pastime with the Manasi Ganga. Krishna, he was on the boat with the gopis, and the boat was rocking and everything like that, and he arranged this whole pastime, all this difficulty, just to get Srimati Radharani to embrace him.
Where she also found his flute.
Yeah, and she also found his flute. So yeah, it's another kind of transcendental, loving exchange with the Lord when the devotee undergoes difficulty. And so another reason that's brought up why the Lord allows certain things like this to go on is that it gives devotees in subsequent eras Prabhupada basically to give us something to talk about. There's this song, actually maybe I can find it in here. There's this line in this verse in that song Gopinath by, here it is, by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says, where is it? Yeah. Gopinath, tumi kripa barabar, jibera karane asya prapoche, Lila koile shubhishtar. He says, Gopinath, you are an ocean of mercy. And just for the sake of the fallen conditioned souls, you expand your divine pastimes in this phenomenal world. So the Lord, just for the sake of giving the devotees and the fallen living entities in general something to meditate on. Like there's this verse, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantyasto Hyabadrani Vidunoti Surhritsatam. That the pastimes of the Lord, they're very pious to hear and to chant about. And when one hears about them and recites them, then the Lord within the heart, He purifies that person, whoever is reciting them. He purifies them of all unwanted things within their heart. So it's the Lord's compassion, actually, that He expands His pastimes in this material world. Like you can imagine, of course, like Lord Ram, He could have killed Ravana right there. I mean, He didn't have to do this whole thing where He was searching for Sita. He could have just like that appeared there in Lanka. Actually, he didn't even have to appear there in Lanka. He could have just, in his mind, desired to kill Ravana, and then Ravana could have died, and Sita could have reappeared by him right there, or Sita could have never been kidnapped in the first place. So, but it's the Lord's mercy that he expands these different pastimes, and he makes them very interesting and very relishable, so that the devotees can, relish hearing about them and chanting about them, and thus become purified. So in the same way, Nrsimhadeva, he could have come and slain Hiraṇyakaśipu right from the beginning. But in order to glorify his devotee, and in order to give the conditioned souls an example of how they should see the world, and also to give them something to relish hearing about and chanting about, and thus become purified, he expanded this pastime, and he performed this pastime of saving Prahlāda Mahārāja from the tortures of Hiraṇyakaśipu. So it's a little early, but we could have questions if senior devotees have anything to add, certainly, maybe. Yes, Maharaj.
Well, unless somebody else has a question. You always have a question.
Last time I did it.
Just to churn things. Mm-hmm. One could say that, just using a devotee like a pawn so that his glories can be spread and, to bring out his bhav. And, Prahlāda was, of course, he was surrendered to Krishna, but one could imagine, incorrectly, but one could imagine that, he was in anxiety. So you put poor little Prahlāda through all of this just so that your pastimes can be glorified, and, okay, fine, you bring out you show how surrendered he was, but, I always had a problem with that Jonah and the whale in the Bible. It sounds like the same kind of thing,
Yeah.
Because it just as the Jonah and the whale, the thing was that God and the devil supposedly were talking, and God was saying, "Oh, look how devoted my Jonah is," and the devil said, "Yeah, because he's easygoing. Character is tested in adversity. Let's see how well he does when he's in difficulty." Mm-hmm. And so, just to prove how devoted he was, God put him through so much. Mm-hmm. Seems kind of sadistic.
Yeah. So, there's this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Ye yatha mam prapadyante, tam tatheva bhajamyaham, mama vartmanuvartante, manusya partha sarvashah. That according to how a devotee surrenders, this is one way of seeing it, that according to how a devotee surrenders, the Lord reciprocates with him in the same way. So Prahlāda Mahārāja, he was extremely surrendered. He was completely, not even just extremely surrendered, he was completely 100% surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so for those devotees, although they may experience some difficulty, some anxiety, it's not the same kind of anxiety that materialists experience. It's a transcendental kind of anxiety because they are more deeply taking shelter of the Lord, and they're always meditating upon the Lord. Like, for example, Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur surely felt some anxiety.
Inconvenience.
Yeah, but at the same time, because he was induced, or you could say he had some impetus to take deeper shelter of the holy name. It was actually, in one sense, you could say very blissful. Just like Queen Kunti, she's praying again and again for calamity. She said, "Okay, we went through all these different things. Let it all happen again, because when we're experiencing calamity, then we get to see you." So in a similar way.
So,
yep.
You're saying, just to make sure I got it right, and I think it's a good answer, that, to a material, we don't know what the advanced devotees like this are experiencing. Mm-hmm. We can project our idea what they may be experiencing, but actually being in that dangerous situation makes them call out and depend on Krishna even more intensely,
Yeah.
which is actually a sweet experience for them. So actually they're not, you know, on one hand there may be inconvenience or whatever, but they're internally they're relishing even more.
Yeah. And
so
then,
it's actually a benediction.
yeah.
Okay.
And then the Lord knowing that, that's why I quoted that verse, Ye tamam prapatyante, because the Lord, He doesn't do that to everybody. Like, for example, if the Lord put...
Oh, I see. Put a lot of...
Yeah.
I've been through some rough...
Yeah. But the Lord doesn't, you know, arrange for all of His devotees to be boiled in oil and all of His devotees to be, you know, thrown off a cliff or something like that, because He knows that they probably won't be able to handle it. So according to...
It wouldn't bring out their bob and ultimately be relishable to them.
Yeah, and another example also is like the gopis. The gopis externally, it seems like they're in extreme agony. It seems like they're in great pain. But this pain, this agony is actually the highest, the topmost level of ecstasy. Because it like I said, gives one impetus to take very, very, very deep shelter of the Lord.
Good answer. Thank you very much.
If I could just, because when you were speaking about how Krishna, he comes and he enacts all these pastimes and it gives a subject matter a hearing. There's a verse at the end of the Rasa Lila, which is exactly that, if I can just share it. Anugrahaya bhaktana manusam nehemastataha bhajate tadushi krita yashud vatat paro bhavet. Lord Krishna descends apparently as a human being, and he exhibits his transcendental pastimes in Vrindavan so that the conditioned soul may be attracted to hearing his transcendental activities. And then you see the introduction to the Krishna book. You know, Prabhupada talks about that, is that, you know, these pastimes are so attractive, anyone can read them and they'll be fascinated and be attracted to learn more about Krishna. What to speak of devotees who, you know, are really more advanced and be relishing so much. 10th canto. So that's one of Krishna's plans, is that he comes and enacts all these things, you know. Like the Prahlāda and the Nrsimha pastime, you know, Prabhupada would refer to it again and again, and there's so much instruction, you know, mixed in with it. It's wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Just in addition, not taken away, but just in addition, and highlighting a particular point, but the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, just the Vedic literature in general, it's for the upliftment, education, enlightenment of the conditioned souls, of the souls in this world. So some of these past, like Prahlāda Mahārāja and these different devotees being put into difficulty, it's for education. It's for our education, it's for our upliftment, because there needs to be some examples of devotees who were put through difficulties and they became, or they teach us how to, what's the right frame of mind. Because if you put somebody through difficulty who's not Krishna conscious, or not very Krishna conscious, or, you know, conditioned in many ways, then they're not really going to go through it properly. They're not going to...
They'll become atheists.
Yeah, they'll become atheists. So there has to be some examples of devotees like that for education, for teaching. And Prabhupada mentions this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about Chota Haridas, which there's some indication like that this is actually for education purposes, you know. That. So, anyways, it's an interesting point, because we do need examples. Okay, Hare Krishna.
In the Mahabharata, there's a discussion between Duryodhana and Nrsimhadeva. And Nrsimhadeva mentions to Duryodhana that he better returns Yudhishthira the kingdom. And he said, you think that you put him through many austerities to make him suffering. But all those austerities had made him way more powerful than you can imagine. Yeah, so the austerities that a devotee has to endure, actually, because he takes shelter of the Lord, he becomes more and more powerful. And he told Duryodhana that Yudhishthira could just glance over your army and burn it into ashes. That powerful you have made it. That powerful you have made him. But he's not going to do that. He's going to fight. But you have no chance to win. So those austerities that the devotees had to suffer actually make them even more powerful.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Is everybody done? No? All right. Save the last for the best, right? Hare Krishna. I like this subject. This is one of my favorites. Last time I didn't even interrupt. This one's real good. So my question is the same question I had last time when I was talking with Bala, and I asked him, how can we get more problems, more difficulty? So that's where the growth is at. But I said it in a certain way, but that was the main idea, because we were talking about Russia is like surpassing everybody. And I was like, man, how could America start to improve? And I was like, and I asked, like, why are they improving? Because they brought it up. And he said, well, they're going through a lot of stuff. And I was like, maybe America needs a lot of problems as well, so we can start to grow.
Well, there's an analogy given. Sridhar Swami, who is one of the main commentators, or basically is the main commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam, in one of his commentaries, he says, just like, I'm going to extrapolate this example. He said, just like a rich man who has a son, his son, in order to become rich, he doesn't have to do anything. He just has to basically stay alive. And then his father will eventually die and he'll inherit the money. So, and the example is given because just like, if somebody's in Krishna consciousness, then all they have to do is just stay alive in Krishna consciousness and then look at the goal. But in a similar way, all you have to do is stay alive in the material world and you'll get problems. So you don't have to look for them or create them. Just stay alive and you'll have problems. So
over there in Russia, they used to have communists. They're literally making it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't take political
But there's
get lost in all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, but there will be problems, trust me.
They're like sadistics on steroids over there.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll have Artina. Okay. Nrsimhadeva Bhagavan ki jai, Prahlāda Mahārāja ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.